Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you enjoyed your lunch. Before I proceed forward, I'd like to remind you once again to fill in the feedback forms and leave your business cards outside. The next panel discussion for the day is intended to provide ample opportunities to discuss barriers and challenges faced, views from home and IEOs and UNAs in a very cosmopolitan environment. Kanchana obtained a Bachelor of Business Administration degree from the University of Colombo and has Achieving Scholar completed an MSc in Local Economic Development from the London School of Economics, where she is currently reading for her PhD. Kanchana, over to you.
Thank you for returning after lunch. There's always a tricky situation, some people decide to walk away, so thank you. So this panel is here to discuss the institutional framework. In the morning, we had questions regarding immigration, how do I get a work permit. So a lot of experience. He will be our featured speaker. Professor Samarajeva, if I can have you on stage.
So thank you for giving me this opportunity. I jumped at the opportunity of talking about return because I have much experience in returning. I've returned to Sri Lanka 3 times. Once was within a week of defending my PhD, and I went back in 2 years, and so on. But of course, you understand that when you return many times, you also have the experience in leaving many times, which I have done. But I thought that it would not be appropriate only to speak from experience, but that I should try to bring to bear some systematic knowledge to this problem. And when I was thinking about this, I was thinking that there are interesting parallels between attracting investment and attracting people, Sri Lankans to come back, or people like Bridget to come and work here and contribute their knowledge. So there are some parallels and some similarities, and also given the questions that we heard in the morning regarding entrepreneurship and coming back and setting up companies, I thought it would be useful to think about these two things in parallel. So I will run through my presentation with these two themes in mind. So basically, you heard in the morning that people come back, they make their decisions, not on a systematic analysis with all the facts and figures, but basically from their heart. And to a great extent, that's how investors do it too. However much we think they're systematic about it, in the end, there's so many imponderables and so much imperfect information, is that you're basically taking a leap. So one of the most important things in business is to establish a legal presence. I work in places like Myanmar, where these are not simple matters, right? In the case of coming back, for some people like me who never gave up my citizenship, that was not a problem. I always had my passport. But for some others who may have taken another citizenship, or who didn't have it in the first place, or who's a child of somebody of Sri Lankan origin, that is a major issue. How do you establish a legal presence here? In all these areas, what we tend to have, both in investment and in other areas, is that we have in our country a huge amount of discretion that the government keeps for itself. And one of the things why we are undeveloped is, I think, because we keep too much discretion for ourselves, for the government. So when you have too much discretion and not enough transparency about how that discretion is exercised, and how about accountability for those decisions, you tend to have higher risk, let's say, put it that way, higher risk. One could go one more step and say there's an opportunity for various kinds of rent seeking, but let's just stay with higher risk, or at least with perceptions of higher risk. So when you have perceptions of higher risk, what happens is that your returns have to be commensurately high. And the people who pay for that are the people who are going to benefit from the investment or the person coming into the country. The investment that comes in wants exclusivities, wants all kinds of special privileges to address the higher risk, or they want higher returns, and the person who comes in may or may not come in, because now the risks are not being met by enough of a return. So we could have, in the past, when these decisions were looked at, we could have changed, sort of done a comprehensive overview of our laws and looked at all the things where discretion was involved, where it was not necessary to have 3 layers of government approving something and so on. But instead, what we did is we created the BOI, what I call a sort of a zone of exception. It was originally the Greater Colombo Economic Commission. So it was intended to be a one-stop shop, and it was supposed to carve out a separate space. If you're coming through that door, life will be simple. And in actual fact, even today, if you are coming to work for a BOI company, versus you're coming to work for anybody other than a BOI company, your situation is completely different. Your visa procedures, all these things will be much easier if you come in through the BOI door, because that's the exception that we have created. Now, it was originally intended to be a one-stop shop, but various ups and downs over the last few decades, it's no longer a pure one-stop shop. And there is also this other issue that is coming up, which is that you could even have, for example, take a simple case of a fully Sri Lankan-owned company which wants to get some foreign interns or foreign workers because they want to move into something new. Now, the first thing that the lawyers will advise them is, go get BOI status, get foreign money in, stop being 100% Sri Lankan, become a BOI company, then your life will be stable. That doesn't seem to be quite sensible. I mean, unnecessarily going in for partnerships, simply because you want a lesser regulatory burden. But that's the way the world is. Now, the organization that I run is not in the BOI, so I speak from personal pain. So, we have also, in many other cases, you can also have countries bound by the rules of multilateral or bilateral trade rules. For example, covering what we call Mode 3 and Mode 4. Mode 3 is when companies come in. You can put language in the bilateral agreements or multilateral agreements which say that the employees of that company, certain kinds of employees, will be able to move here without hassle. There's very little discretion about them coming in. But we have not signed those things, and we don't really believe in removing discretion through that route. Mode 4 is, of course, very controversial. As some of you may remember, we had some pretty high-octane debates a few years ago about the India-Sri Lanka Economic Partnership Agreement, which is the first time that we looked at service sector trade. And there, the issue really was about one of the key issues was Mode 4, where we would allow natural persons of certain professional qualifications to move between the two countries. So, for the problem at hand, for our problem, which is about people coming back and working in Sri Lanka, one of the things that we could do is to do a comprehensive overview and remove all the unnecessary laws. Won't happen. Second best would be to create some kind of facilitation unit within the Department of Immigration to facilitate this, if this is something the government is interested in. And we'll talk a little bit about the dual citizenship issue, in the sense that right now, officially it is suspended, but we have been informed as of today that it is activated and that it will be formally, you can get dual citizenship in Sri Lanka. That's what we've been told as of today. So, some relevant differences between investment and return. Some of the people who looked at this draft have debated with me, but I am arguing that with people coming in, I should argue, I come 3 times. You don't come all in. You come and then maybe you go back, and then maybe you come again, right? So testing of waters may be something that might work with people. And they may actually like that, particularly say young people who've grown up their whole lives there. They maybe what they want to do is to see how it works. My daughter had a boyfriend who wanted to move back to India, and one of the things that she did is she said, I want to see it. She took an internship, spent some time in Bangalore. I don't want to do this, broke up with the boyfriend. That's how you do these things, yeah? Right. So, I'm all for those kinds of testing arrangements. We really don't know about the future. The best way to learn about the future is to sort of do a little, figure it out, and then decide, yeah? I think, who was it, Deng Xiaoping talked about it, testing the rocks to cross the river, right? Just test it, and then cross the river. Because we don't have a lot of options. Now these, of course, we can exempt, I suppose, people who have dual citizenship or residency requirements. I mean, I kept all my passport and all that, but I had green card, I had the right to live legally in the Netherlands, etc., right? So, I could have always, after 6 months, I could have gone back. So, people generally, if they've been abroad for some time, they have the options, but I recognize that not everybody has. So, what are the solutions that we can give for this? Now, earlier I was saying we need to have some kind of unit that will look at this problem within the Department of Immigration and Immigration. Another is that we should think about something a little broader than the BOI-centered approach that we have had for some time. In the same way that in the old days, I don't know whether you remember, the BOI was for the geographical area. Then they said, irrespective of geography, we will give companies with BOI status standing. So in the same way, we can sort of expand it and say, these rules should be generally applicable to all. One of the things, again, that I'm in favor of is short-term options that can build up. Because in many cases, people are concerned in government about giving citizenship to people who don't have a real commitment to the country. What better way to show commitment than to come and actually do something? Words are cheap, action is not. Create authorizations for gap year students, interns, to allow them to come back. I can remember when I was in government, I actually had to come. I went and explored the possibilities of doing something called Lanka, where we would get the children of Sri Lanka parents to come back and spend some time here, learn about the country, things like that. We didn't implement it, but that's an idea that I think still could be feasible. We have a situation in I have been on record praising the Department of Immigration and Immigration because their passport issuance is world class. I have actually got my passport renewed in 20 minutes flat, in 2 visits in 1 day. The total time I spent inside that office, I timed it, was 20 minutes, and without knowing anybody, going forward, right? 10 minutes and 10 minutes. But there are some other areas where they could improve things, like when you try to register a kid born abroad in Sri Lanka. Not so easy. Money. Generally speaking, people who leave the country for good, my experience, again, I can be corrected, I think we'll have somebody from the central bank who can expand on that. My experience and the experience of people I've talked to is that generally speaking, people can take their money with them if they show that they are leaving for good. So, for example, in one of my departures, I took my EPF money out, right? So, I've taken it closer that far. The problem is, if there are any restrictions, people won't bring it in. That's what a lot of government people don't understand. If you restrict taking out, they won't bring it in. There are all kinds of ways in which they can keep their money outside. So understanding that, I think it would be useful to look at these rules and rationalize them a little. When you move, either a company, when you set up a company, or if you are coming back, there are lots and lots of services that you need. I brought teenagers here. I would say that's a technically impossible thing to do, which is to bring teenagers from one country to another. It's extraordinarily time consuming and very difficult. It was more than negotiating a trade agreement in my case. My negotiation with my daughters, you can't remember how many, so many return tickets, this guarantee, that guarantee, air conditioned accommodation, all cat had to be brought, all kinds of things I had to promise, right? So, you have to find housing, you have to get kids into school. There's a whole lot of things that you need to do when you move, particularly a family. I mean, moving as an individual is one story, but moving a family is something else completely. And there, I think I'm really impressed by the WorkInSriLanka website, which is trying to reduce those transaction costs. But beyond transaction costs, I think we need real services. And I would even argue that, you don't need sort of government to try to solve these problems. Much better would be for some person who has gone through this experience to turn around and solve it with a company that provides these services for money. I think some of these things are already going on. People have told me after looking at my draft that there are already 1 or 2 places that are providing these kinds of services. Taxation, in my opinion, I pay taxes in many countries. I personally think the taxation regime here is pretty decent. Just to give you one example, when I work for an entity outside Sri Lanka, and I bring the money in and I declare it, I put it in a Sri Lankan account and I declare it, it's tax-free. Basically, they treat it as an export in the same way that the government encourages goods exports. They also encourage service exports. On the other hand, if I bring money to a company and then the company pays me, I pay taxes. But I think I should pay taxes. I don't think it's reasonable not to pay taxes. So we should pay taxes. And even there, I think the rates are not excessive. I calculated what I pay every year. It's not too bad. Compared to where I've been. If anybody's paying taxes in the Netherlands, God, you can. We are definitely better than that. In the end, everything, I think even from what you heard in the morning, is about mindsets. It's about what's in our heads, rather than what's outside. If in our heads we see only problems, and we don't see solutions, we don't see opportunities, we live in a bleak world. So we do have some mindset problems, but I think this can be overcome. With regard to the economy, I get into these debates with people all the time, where they see business opportunities as zero sum. One Indian company coming here, one Pakistani company coming here, oh my God, they are going to take away our business. I say, hey guys, this economy is an expanding pie. They come, they will buy something from you, right? And they will create a higher profile for you, right? Don't think of it that way. I, for good or ill, have been associated with the telecom sector in this country. And people sometimes come and tell me, oh, what have you done? You brought all these foreign companies and they're 100% foreign owned and they're taking our money out, they're taking profits out. I said, look at the profits they're declaring and look at the investments they're making. And look at the fact that we actually have telephones now. When in the old days, they didn't take any profits out, we had no investment and we had no service and we were all waiting for telephones. And today we have like 2-minute telephones. So these are discussions we have to continue to have. And from my perspective, I'm having them not necessarily English, in Sinhala and hopefully in Tamil in the next few months. On the services side, there is a very sad thing that I have experienced. It's this idea that we give jobs to people. We give jobs. I always think of it as, people should be grateful. I gave a job to you. I always think I'm grateful for somebody coming and working for me. I recruit people. I don't give jobs. I recruit talent because they come to me, I am better for them. My organization is better for them. My biggest problem is I don't have enough people. That's why I support this enterprise. Hopefully I get more people, right? There's another one which says, we stayed and we paid the price, we lived through the bombs. All of us have done various kinds of things in our life. What to do? Move on. There's another one which says, that those who we hire cannot be better than us. we call it the Kihilinya in Sri Lanka. Which is, I'm not walking very well, so I don't want to hire anybody who can walk faster than me. So I get a guy on crutches. And the guy on crutches, when he has an opportunity to hire somebody, he gets a guy who's on a wheelchair, and so on and so forth, right? So basically, we really need to change our thinking on all these areas. Those who hire must for sure be better than us. At least they must have the potential to be better than us. And that is what we must strive for. That is the way we will increase the productivity of the organizations that we run. We need to get into the recruitment mode. Let me just tell you one thing about the sort of people were talking about how flexible government is. And I just realized listening today how flexible government in Sri Lanka sometimes can be. When we started in Sri Lanka, the ICT agency, in 2002, we had our inaugural publicity event right around here, like late December, because we were aiming for people who were coming back for holidays. And then we actually ran the ads a little later, and I pushed the ads out online through Lanka Academic and various things like that. And we actually got applications from abroad. And then I was seated in a government meeting chaired by an additional secretary, and he says, "What are we going to do with these people who have applied from abroad? Will they come for the interviews?" I said, "They're not going to come for the interviews. We're going to do video conference." "Oh, really? Is that possible?" I said, "Yeah, it's possible." So we talked to the World Bank, got their video conferencing facility, and we actually ran interviews. And some of the people that we interviewed are here today working in this country, right? Now, that part is easy. What I had never realized is that there was at one point a question about somebody having to pay fees, can't remember, England, Australia, someplace, to use the video conferencing facility at the other end. And we paid those fees. Can you imagine? The government of Sri Lanka paid the fees of a person who was employed by the government of Sri Lanka to use a video conferencing facility to participate in the interview. We did it. I was in such a rush that I wasn't paying attention to what miracle these people achieved. I never stopped and said thank you. Thank you today. So, as a result, we got the right kind of people, we had a bigger talent pool, and we, it has nothing in the world is perfect, but we were able to do something good with Sri Lanka. So, problems do exist. Barriers do exist, but so do solutions and opportunities. Let's not wait for the perfect. Incremental progress will get us there. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Samudra, for setting the stage for this discussion. Progressive. I think that is what it is. The panel is looking at how to overcome barriers and challenges. So we are taking a very what can I say? We are looking at it as the glass is half full, and not complaining. As the returnees said, you see how you can not fight the system, but understand the system and see how you can overcome. So to discuss some of the key points that Professor Samudra raised, I would like to invite Mr. Prajeet Balasubramanian, co-founder and managing director of Blue Ocean Ventures, and also the co-founder and director of the Lankan Angel Network. Many of you asked me who he was. Here he is. Prajeet, you can take a seat. Thank you. So just to introduce Prajeet further, he is currently the Vice President of the Sri Lanka Singapore Business Council. Apart from this, Prajeet is also involved in the British Business Council, Maldivian Council, and a few other business councils to promote bilateral trade. Previously, he served at Federal Mogul and United Technologies Corp. He holds a degree of MCom from the University of Sydney, specializing in management and marketing, and a degree of electric engineering from the University of Wollongong, Australia. That is Prajeet for you. Next, to discuss exchange control, we have from the Central Bank, Ms. Shana Kamalin, who is an assistant controller at the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. During her career at the central bank, she has been attached to the exchange control department throughout, and she has been working in the area of foreign investment and capital account transactions. Prior to joining the bank, she was a lecturer at the Faculty of Management Studies and Commerce at the University of Sri Lanka. Shana has obtained her Bachelor of Management from the University of Jawaharlal and completed her MSc in Public Policy from the National University of Singapore, I think the prestigious Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy. So, Shana's view. And next, to discuss taxation, Professor Samudra said how benign the taxation system here is. To further discuss this and see whether it is actually so, we have Mr. Sujiva Mudilage from PricewaterhouseCoopers, who is a partner. He has extensive experience in this area, not only in this area, in many other areas where he has been able to promote Sri Lanka and Sri Lankan companies. 25 years of experience in public accounting practice and in the industry in Sri Lanka and overseas. He's currently a partner at PricewaterhouseCoopers, Sri Lanka. He has served on regulatory bodies such as the Securities and Exchange Commission of Sri Lanka, Sri Lanka Accounting and Auditing Standards Monitoring Board. He is also a member of the governing boards of the University of Colombo School of Computing, Postgraduate Institute of Management, the National Institute of Business Management. He is also a member of the Financial System Stability Consultative Committee of the Central Bank. This is actually a private sector committee at the Central Bank where we consult them to understand the pulse of the economy. He recently completed his tenure as the president of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Sri Lanka. He is a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Sri Lanka, fellow of the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants, and a fellow of the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants. I think he really will know what he's talking about this morning. And to discuss immigration, we have from the Department of Immigration, Deputy Controller, Mr. Ranjit Pimal Surya. He is a class 1 officer of the Sri Lanka Administrative Service and holds a BA in Sociology from the University of Peradeniya, an MA in Sociology from the University of Canada, and Diploma in Public Administration. Prior to his current role in the Immigration Department, he has served as the Assistant Divisional Secretary to Sevenagala, Assistant Secretary to in the Ministry of Land, Irrigation and Environment, and also the Divisional Secretary of Dompet. So we have a very diverse and knowledgeable panel. So we will start a discussion. We will first discuss, I will pose some questions to the panelists and then we will open the floor for questions. To start off, Professor Samudra highlighted some areas that I think we can base our discussion on. Let's start with immigration. Ranjan, can you explain how people can come and work in Sri Lanka? They don't necessarily have to be people of Sri Lankan origin, because we actually have in our audience people who are not of Sri Lankan origin. And if you're not a citizen, very simply, what are the ways that you can come to work in Sri Lanka?
Kanjana, actually, two ways, as Professor mentioned, then if you come for working here, so you need to get the proper visa for working. And if the person wanted to work, that visa is granted for on and off travelers who are willing to come here and stay for longer. So obtaining visa for working, actually in Sri Lanka we don't have that work permit. Visa is granted for working here, that we call it as working visa. So ex-Sri Lankans easily come and stay here under tourist visa and apply for the resident visa. They don't need to get the prior approval for entering into the country. But for the foreigners, before their arrival, the Sri Lankan counterpart has to apply that visa on behalf of them, the people who are willing to come. So that is we call as entry visa, which is the prior approval for entry to the country. That is decided by the company as well as that should be recommended by the line ministry. For instance, if it is related to the environmental activities, the company objects are related to environmental activities, that ministry has to recommend employing that particular person in Sri Lanka. So with that visa, that person has to enter the country, and after the long-term visa is issued by the education.
Is this the same for BOI and non-BOI?
Yeah, the same procedure is there. Actually, for BOI, we request only the recommendation from BOI and Ministry of Defence.
So basically what you're saying is that to obtain the working work permit, that there isn't so much of a difference between BOI and non-BOI, you have to submit the relevant documentation.
Yeah, process.
No, but I thought if it's BOI, you need only the BOI. BOI will get the other one.
Ministry of Defence.
But otherwise you have to go directly to whatever the relevant is. And that can be complicated. Not therefore.
I think these are the things that we need to raise and see how we can sort of smoothen out as we progress. I think that's why we have this.
Part of the problem is we have so many ministries. I have great difficulty figuring out which ministry I belong.
Ranjan, just to ask another question. So we are talking about people coming in on work permit. Let's say a foreigner wants to become a Sri Lankan or get permanent residency. How does that work?
There's no possibility to become a Sri Lankan actually. Only ex-Sri Lankan can become Sri Lankan again. Foreigners, we don't grant the citizenship for foreigners.
Adakla was never a citizen. He had a sort of long stay, visitor visa.
Yeah.
And with all permanent residency.
Yeah, we grant the permanent residency. Actually, basically visa is for 1 year. That is extendable. That can be extended.
So as it stands, it's the crux of what you're saying is if you submit the correct documentation and it goes through the process, it's not a problem to come and work in Sri Lanka. I think that's because the focus of work in Sri Lanka is having people to come and work, and whether you get over the first barrier, which is entry into the country. And as Ranjit pointed out, it can be done.
And the processing visa is not a problem.
Yes, we are all quite impressed by the fast work process. We haven't had the reason to obtain visa. We don't on that side of the department. Pradeep, you have been setting up businesses, in the business of venture capital. How has the process been practically? And because you yourself, you're a returnee, and you have a lot of companies with returnees, with foreign, with non-nationals working in them. How easy has the practice been in obtaining visas? And
so most of the guys who have actually started companies here are nationals. We've had a few non-nationals coming and working. But from the investor perspective, we've had non-nationals coming and investing, like Indian Angel Network. We've had no issues so far with funds coming through it's called the share investment account. So if you open this share investment account, it's pretty straightforward. You can open it through any bank you like. And most of these guys that use HSBC or ICICI Bank recently from India. And we've the Lankan Angel Network is associated with the Indian Angel Network today, and Indian Angel Network is the largest angel network in India. And so they started this about 6 years ago, and when we launched this last year here, by that time we had funded about 13 companies with about $1.5 million, and 70% of them money came from India. There was no issue. There were a few teething issues in terms of, so it was issue on both sides, because from one side the investor did not read the whole thing properly, and I think more so it was the problem with the investor more than the structure, because for us, I went through the whole process when we did our company, Blue Ocean Ventures went through this, and my partner sits in India, and when he had to transfer his funds across, it was a very straightforward process. So we didn't have any issues there. And similarly with the OIA account, which is the Overseas Investment Account, so as a local, if I was to invest outside, there's an Overseas Investment Account, which which is also quite straightforward. Again, a few hiccups here and there because certain individuals in the banks don't know what OI is. But that's all teething issues where training has to be done.
Thank you, Bridget. I think you already did half of Shanaz's explanations as well. So, Shanaz, if you could, let's just go into the transfer of money because Mr. Samudra also highlighted that money can be, there are certain hiccups when it comes to transferring money. Shanaz, could you explain how it is for an employee in Sri Lanka, because how the residency changes when they come? And for the individual, he already touched on investors, but let's start with the individual, because we have individuals who are here coming to work. What would they be able to do and not be able to do?
First of all, I have to take it as a compliment, because so far he's okay with the exchange control regulations that we have imposed, and it seems to be okay. So with that compliment, if it is an individual who is working in Sri Lanka and who is trying to work in Sri Lanka as an expatriate, there are several accounts that we have designated for them. So they can open an INFC, which is a non-national foreign currency account, where they are permitted to convert their rupee earnings into the RNFC account, and then for upkeeping their families abroad, they can also remit the money out of the RNFC account. And also, let's say the individual who lives abroad, they can also remit the money out of the RNFC account. And also, let's say the individual who is working in Sri Lanka, if he's a resident, if he's earning foreign currency exchange as a professional service provider, and there's another account we have designated for them, we call it as a foreign currency account for international service providers and its employees. So if you are eligible to open that foreign currency account, you'll be it's very easy for you to deposit your salary monthly and then remit whatever the proceeds into your households to upkeep your families abroad. And also the residents who are in Sri Lanka, if they are earning foreign currency exchange, they can open a we call it FIA, Foreign Exchange Earners Account, which we introduced in 2012. So with that account, any resident who is earning foreign currency can deposit the income into FIA account and then utilize that funds in the FIA account for their investment purpose and as well as for the current account transaction purposes.
So there is no distinction between BOI and non-BOI here, is there?
Normally, when it comes to BOI companies, there are two types of companies that we can see. That is, one company, normally the companies which are registered under Section 16, which will be subject to all the rules and regulations in the country as a normal company which has been already incorporated. If we look at the companies which are registered under Section 17, those are the companies which will be exempted from the Exchange Control Act. But in that, we can't assure that all of them who are registered under Section 17 will be exempted from the exchange control. It's because you have to look at the agreement between the parties, that means the company and the BOI, because in the agreement they will specify up to which extent that they have been granted the exemptions. So you can't generalize when it comes to the BOI companies.
If I can just ask Prajit a question, follow up from that. Are most of your companies Section 17 companies, no. Section 16 or no BOI?
Blue Ocean Ventures is a BOI company, but we are in Section 16, and to be honest with you, I'm not sure what that means. we have not got any benefits yet, and we are not looking for any benefits in that sense. But I would now look at getting benefits for all the startups that we have done, because all these seed funds need to grow and they need all the help they can get. And so I spoke to the government today and said, we should look at not us, but the companies, some tax grants. Because if you look at countries like Canada, UK, Australia, where the tax system is great for angel funding, And that's where it's growing. And as a result, there's a lot of FDIs coming to those countries. And also entrepreneurship is growing. With that, employment is created, economy grows.
That we would like a system, because Samudra was talking about BOI being an island. So if the structure comes outside the BOI system, then there would not be the special case. And then, so hopefully that solution will come outside the BOI system so that it's applicable right now. So let's see how that goes. Yeah, as long as it comes. Shana, just to get back to you. So exchange control has been liberalizing a lot in the past few years. And I think this is because of the flexibility that the economy has been able to have due to the economic growth. Could you just point out what recent developments that have taken place? The reason that I want Shana to speak on this is because we're talking about overcoming barriers, and as Professor Samudra also pointed out, it is a continuous progressive system. And Sri Lanka has already, a lot of the institutions have already started in this process. Immigration, exchange control, many other institutions are very progressive. And if you could just explain the liberalizations that have been taking place the past few years.
Actually, Exchange Control Department is an agency function of the government of Sri Lanka, which is undertaken by the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. So, the establishment of the Exchange Control Act is in 1953. As the name suggests, it's actually the regulator of the foreign currencies, like foreign exchange transaction in the Sri Lankan economy. But starting from 1977, open economic policy, the exchange control regulations have been gradually relaxed. If you look at 1994, with the signing of IMF Article 8, the current account is actually it's a convertible current account. That means all transactions, the current account transactions are freely, you can actually do transactions, current account transactions, freely without any restriction over that. But when it comes to the capital account transactions, there are certain restriction over the capital account transaction. When I refer capital account transaction, that means purchasing of assets and investing abroad, the foreign direct investment coming into Sri Lanka, and migrant fund transfers, all this comes under capital account transactions. So starting from 2011, actually 2010, the Exchange Control Department realized that we need to keep in par with the other countries, developing countries or developed countries actually. When we look at other countries, we thought of like liberalizing the capital account in a like extensive manner. Because I'll just mention a few of the examples. From 1997, we were attracting FDIs, and there were a circular that we have issued for the foreign direct investors to come in and invest in Sri Lankan shares. But it has it can be either listed shares and non-listed both. In 2010, prior to that actually, that account which we designated for the share investment called as Sierra. Some people may have heard about Sierra. And for the T-bill investment, there was another account called Tierra D. For the bonds, there was an account called Tierra. And for diaspora, there was another account called Tierra D. So all these are very cumbersome, cumbersome when it comes to the investor's point of view. So in 2010, what we did was, we amalgamated all these accounts, that is Sierra, Tierra, Tierra 2, Tierra D, into one account. The companies registered in Sri Lanka need not have to take any permission from the Exchange Control Department. So even those money that is going to lend to the Sri Lankan companies can be routed through SIA. And also property, for the investment in properties, and also units, debentures, and also T-bills, T-bonds, preference shares, not only ordinary shares, units, as I mentioned. So all these avenues are now available for the foreign investors to route their money through SIA. Only requirement is that they have to route the money through SIA. As long as they invested through the SIA, there won't be any issue at the time of repatriating their sale proceeds or their dividends, their whatever the profit. And also, when it comes to like establishing branch offices in Sri Lanka, it's also possible through SIA. Previously, we had a separate account for that. In 2010, when we are introducing the general permission for the companies incorporated abroad to have the branch office, liaison office, representative office in Sri Lanka, they had to invest through a special account called IIA, Inward Investment Account. So after that, in 2013 January onwards, we abolished the IIA account and we allowed them to invest through SIA. So that's how we have been changing, like time to time we have been relaxing our regulations with the intention that to promote the investor convenience, and it actually promotes the monitoring of the central bank as well. So both the intentions were met by amalgamating all these things into one account and allowing them to route the money to SIA.
Thanks, Shanaz. I think this Shanaz went to very extensively and comprehensively explain the changes that came about in 2010 and how they made investing easier, and also as a resident employee, you will have your transfer of money becomes very easy. I had a conversation with Sujiva yesterday, and he pointed out how even when you have a fixed dollar guarantee for your salary, the advantages of that in the present company structure, regardless of whether you're being paid in dollars or not. Sujiva, would you just like to share that before we go into the next topic, which is related as well?
I think just to respond to some of the points that Rohan raised as well. I think over the last few years, we made things much simpler than where we were 5 years ago. I think we all agree, but we still have some progress to be made. I mean, it's not, let's be honest, it's not as easy as it's in Singapore or Hong Kong. I mean, that's reality. But if you ask me, are we better than India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, Maldives, Myanmar? You just name it, we are far better. I mean, it's no comparison. It's no point comparing any one of the South Asian, SAARC countries. I mean, we are far superior, whether it's on employment, whether it's getting work permits, starting companies, repatriation of money, dividends, technical fees, management fees, you just name it. Getting money out of this country is far superior. Tax rates are much better. But the bottom line is we need to be, in my view, we need to aspire to be as good as Hong Kong or Singapore. So that's bottom line, but we are much better. Just to answer your question, Kanchana, is that, over the years, there have been many expats who've been working here. And I've seen what they do is, as you know, because the legal form of currency is rupee, but the fact is when most of them come, if they are, for example, employed by foreign currency earning companies, they agree on a dollar salary, but they are paid in rupee. But the fact is, when you come in, you can say, I want X thousand of dollars when I come in, but you are paid for in rupee. So the fact is that to some extent, you are covered against any fluctuation in the rupee fluctuation. And I think as explained very well, is for them to repatriate money to upkeep their parents, kids, anyone, spouse and children, absolutely no problem at all. It's pretty easy. As it stands now.
Sujiva, if you could just continue to discuss about the competitiveness of earnings, because we discussed this yesterday, and you also raised country comparisons, and just highlight this in the light of the present tax regime, and also whether there is a difference or whether someone would have more. I think it also goes as a no-brainer in the high potential areas that people. There are certain industries that have higher earnings and how they benefit from the tax system, because there are certain industries that get a lot of tax benefits regardless of their BOI status. So if you could just explain that aspect as well.
If you take taxes, until this year as an individual, our highest rate of tax was 24%, which is damn good compared to a Sri Lankan in UK, someone in Netherlands, someone in Australia, you pay anything close to 50%. You pay anything close to 50% is your highest bracket of tax. Ours is 24, so you pay half the amount. And believe it or not, a month ago when His Excellency the President announced the budget speech, he said he's going to bring it down to 16% for professionals. So we will pay 1/3 of a Sri Lankan professional working anywhere in the Western world. We'll be paying 1/3 of the taxes. 16%. We need to wait and see. The legislation is still not out. We need to wait until the actual legislation comes out. We never asked for it. But the fact is, I think the thinking behind the ST, the Secretary of the Treasury, was that he wanted to make sure that the professionals are retained in this country to take it to the next level. I think that's the whole idea behind it. It was not something that the professional bodies or the professional institutes pushed for. But we understand we need to pay some form of taxes, and at 24%, it's not a bad rate. It's a pretty good rate actually. I've worked overseas. I'm used to paying anything close to 50%. So commencing next year, I may be paying only 16%. So, but as I said, we need to wait and see until the legislation is out. If you take comparative earnings, if you take, especially in my profession, if you take the accountancy field, I would say what you would earn here is far better than what you would earn anywhere in this part of the region. You need to compare that with cost of living or per capita incomes or GDP. So many variable factors. But let's be honest. I think professionals here earn a decent salary and live comfortably here. Let's be honest. Irrespective of the professions, the earnings are good. I've seen where we say actually the multiples of the lowest earning workers to the professionals, the multiples here is actually much higher than what you would get in Europe or in most of the developed world. So that means our gap is much higher. It clearly says that the earnings of the professionals is, I would say in Sri Lankan context, I don't think you can remember.
If I could just stay with you on that, and you could just touch on dual taxation, how that works.
See, at the moment we've signed anything close to about 40 double tax treaties. We are maybe 39, 40, 41, somewhere around there until end of last year. I don't have the numbers for 2013. So what it says is that, say for example, you are an Australian national. You come and work here for one of the high-tech IT companies. You will pay for your taxes according to Sri Lankan law. You will pay here 24% max. In the event you are asked to, for whatever the reason, is that you are asked to pay for taxes in Australia for your earnings in Sri Lanka, because of the double tax treaty, you can actually set off the taxes what you have paid here. But I haven't seen this happening too often when it comes to professionals. It's very much applicable to companies who have invested here and so on from those countries. But in a rare situation where you are requested to pay for your worldwide income, you can actually set off the taxes what you paid. But because now you will be paying, going forward, you will be paying only 16%. Unfortunately, you will have to pay taxes in those countries because you will be asked to pay anything close to 50% in those countries. So you have technically about 34% taxes where you may be liable for in those countries because you are paying much higher taxes. Whether it's the US, UK, anywhere in Europe. I think Netherlands is a good example. Australia, New Zealand, tax rates up 40, 45, 50%. I think some countries are about 52.
Thank you, Sujeev. In the interest of time, this is actually a very important topic, and we can discuss this further in the discussion, in the audience discussion that we have. I will move to the next topic that I want to discuss, which has been raised from morning, which is entrepreneurship, the alternative to finding a job in a company in Sri Lanka. Pradeep, co-founder of the Lanka Angel Network, can you please explain how someone can come here and start up an enterprise?
Very easy. Join the network. It's called the Lanka Angel Network. And the framework is very clearly defined. The website is called, it's www.lankanangelnetwork.com. So if you're an entrepreneur looking to start a business here or in Australia or Singapore, wherever, you can apply through the network. You send in your business plan, and you can have a conference call or a Skype call and do the presentation by Skype, which we have had with plenty of entrepreneurs who have come to us from around the world. And so basically, once you do the pitch, it will go out to the network, which is almost about 300 high net worth investors, right? So the 300 people consist from India and Sri Lanka, and there are a few from Australia and US and UK as well. So these investors will look at the plans, and if they like it, they will come and form a subgroup, and then you go out with them and they'll start doing the valuation of the company, and then they'll discuss with you, negotiate with you, and they will take a small equity in your company in return for money for the number of years you need for the first year. In general, if it's concept, what we say is we'll take about 25 to 30% for the first year of operation. So you may need about 10 million rupees for the first year of operation, and we take a small equity. And the reason why we take that is to ensure that the entrepreneurship is not killed. The entrepreneur can survive and go on until about round 3, 4. Right? After the third round, obviously you will lose majority control of the company, but by that time you would have grown big, and your bank will be much richer in the sense that you started with nothing and you ended up with some equity, or you ended up with some good valuation for your company.
How do you identify potential areas in Sri Lanka in this current economic environment? And do you see mergers and acquisitions as a growth strategy in Sri Lanka as well? Because let's say one is you're in the business of identifying feasible business projects, and the other is if someone already has capital of their own, they would like to proceed. So you can just explain.
So most of these guys, they come down to they are all basically. I'm a third generation entrepreneur, or fourth. As far as I can remember, my grandfather was an entrepreneur, my father was an entrepreneur, and so am I. So I had jobs. I worked for different companies in Australia, UK, and in Canada, and I came back here after living overseas for 20 years. And I came back in 2002. At that time, in December, we came back sometime in December. I remember the lights, Christmas time, there was plenty of lights around the country, and I thought this is going to boom from here on. And then we took a good dip, and I went through a roller coaster, which is good, because today I'm in a better position to look at things going forward. And I was able to study the market conditions here, so it was really good in that sense. And that's how we started this whole thing.
And so you're a success story. I want to look at the alternative to these two options, which I think Mr. Samudra might be able to tell us. Which is we now have people who are attached to foreign companies, but working in Sri Lanka, in other locations with the increase of technology, and you yourself is someone like that, I think, to a certain extent. How easy is that? How easy is it to operate in that way, where you even we have members of the WorkInSriLanka team who operate like that. They are located here, but they're actually working for companies outside to make it.
Well, I sort of rephrase the question. You work for companies outside, or you work as a knowledge worker, as a consultant? When I came back in 1985, I tried to set up a consulting business here, a little too ahead of my time, I think. And I can remember one of the biggest problems that we had at that point was access to the world's knowledge. So I can remember I write proposals. I can remember writing a proposal for Justice Abrasinghe, who was then Secretary of the Ministry of Justice. And I had a separate line which said database access, so that I could actually spend money and gain access to legal databases. Today, this is nothing, because the internet and the business models behind the internet are basically allowing us to have access to information, to knowledge at a level that is completely equalizes the playing field. Right? I mean, it's about the same. What I've told my people is, most of what you want you can get on the internet. And if you want to buy anything, just tell me. It's much easier for me to pay for those things, $30, $40 a pop, than to buy journals and keep them around and nobody reads. Right? So that is sort of one part of the equation. In terms of people working for companies outside, I have never done this. I know somebody who has. That's called Sanjeev Uyerwardhan. When he came back, he was actually working for IBM Research in the United States, and he was physically here, but he was working there. And for people who think about coming in hard times, this guy I think landed in the airport when the LDT had taken out half the aircraft of Sri Lanka. I thought I had done something big by coming in after the World Trade Center was born, but that sort of takes the cake in 2001. So what it does, it really screws up your sleep patterns, right? I would talk to him in the morning, but I couldn't talk to him in the evenings, because even today, I am in a situation where my wife says, "Aren't you coming to dinner?" No. I got calls, I got conference calls, 7, that's a favorite time for the East Coast in the United States. You're dealing with East Coast United States, 7 to 9, you're continually on the phone. But it's not like the old days where phone calls were expensive, where internet was sporadic. I was telling somebody I was Director General of Telecom in 1998 here. I was the main man, and I had dial-up internet, right? Things have just dramatically improved in terms of connectivity. And my argument is, we no longer have any excuses. If you want to run I tell my friends, if you want to run a consulting business, this is one of the better places. There are problems here. I'll tell you what the problems are. Because I used to tell that, I had like 4 criteria for where I wanted to live. One was, did it have a good airport and good connections? Another was, could I get visas easily? Did people have embassies and consulates and so on, and internet connectivity? And the last one was it acceptable to my wife? Now that's the hardest one to me. You must remember, one of the things that I missed in the conversation so far is that these are never individual decisions. These are collective decisions. You take it with your wife, you take it with your husband. In my case, I took it with the entire family because I moved teenagers, right? So leave that aside, that's a tough one. Sri Lanka's problem is, this visa problem is hard, right? And that is not your fault, sir. It is many other people's faults. We have a really bad passport. And you have to get visas to go to God knows where. You have to get a visa to go to Bangladesh, right? Whereas many other countries you can just walk into countries very easily. So that's a problem. I was counting the number of airlines coming into Washington, Dallas, and that's some 32, and we have got about 33, slightly high, right? Now I still would argue, connectivity is not as great, but generally speaking, things have improved, even on the connectivity front, right? So visas, connectivity, internet. We could be better. One of the things that I've always wanted is I wanted like telepresence kinds of things all over the place. And we really haven't got proper video conferencing facilities here. And our companies have been slow. I even begged and pleaded with Tatas and got them to demonstrate a system here in this very room when I ran one of my conferences. I said purposely, I want somebody from outside to come in on a video link. And it wasn't great, because we are still not putting enough bandwidth into that. There are certain things that can be done to improve the bandwidth situation for companies and the pricing situation for companies. Our lease-like prices, our international connectivity, the prices could be much, much better if the regulator gets a move on it. But other than that, I would say this is a pretty, the conditions are coming together.
Because we now have over 100% mobile coverage in the country and all the...
Yeah, but again, I'm not complaining about voice connectivity.
Yeah.
That is old news. Yeah. What I'm talking about is data connectivity for companies and for information professionals, knowledge workers, so that, I don't know how many of you have experienced telepresence, Cisco system. Telepresence. John Chambers had given, it's a long story, but We are given a telepresence unit for the Palestine territory. We don't have a telepresence system here. And telepresence is so good that you feel like picking up a cup of coffee and sort of giving it to the people on the other side of the screen. It's like they're here. That's the kind of thing we need. And I would say there's a business opportunity for somebody to build up that kind of facility in this country, and also to give the business to them. I mean, the people in the distance learning center have got a lot of great facilities in Sweden, where you can conduct interviews, you can conduct off-site business and so on. And they're complaining to me, saying, why isn't anybody coming and using our services? So I think companies have also got to think in that. Conduct interviews, conduct business, do all kinds of things using the technology.
Taking from that, if someone, a non-national, wants to come to Sri Lanka and work for a company that is abroad, because you mentioned that they have to submit documents from their company here to get visa. What is the visa situation for non-nationals? Because Sri Lankans can come and easily start working and through the internet, and no one will even know until they exchange control picks up on their chances. But for non-nationals, how does it work?
Yeah, actually, Dr. Samudra mentioned that identifying the purview of the companies, it's difficult to define what is the ministry they have to get that recommendation. That's the main problem. Anyway, we have a separate scheme for these kind of people. Actually, that is, we call it as multiple into business visa. So, if a person is a director of a company, if they can easily get that the visa, multiple into business visa, they have to show that they are registered limited liability company, and sometimes the people are in difficult to get this recommendation, but with considering their the contribution to the development of the country, the Controller General can decide this kind of visa can be granted. So, multiple into business visa, the condition of that visa is they have to stay, the period is 1 year, but there's a the stay period on that visa. The maximum, probably maximum is 3 months. Within every 3 months time, they have to leave and come back.
Akshanas, does the exchange control regulation is the same for this type of worker who is attached to a company outside Sri Lanka as it is to any other, because they do get a multiple entry business visa? Would the exchange control regulations be the same, and they can apply as residents and have the same accounts?
When it comes to the residency in view of the exchange control regulations, we go by the permanent place of work, whether it's Sri Lanka or elsewhere. Okay? So if the person is entering Sri Lanka several times, it's a bit of difficulty for us to decide whether it's a resident or non-resident. So based on if he can be regarded as a resident, then all the regulations which are applicable for residents will be applicable to him. If we treat him as a non-resident, then definitely all the non-resident regulations which are applicable to them will be same to him.
Okay, right. Before we open the floor, just one last round of questions from the panel, which is, this conference, we called it Work in Sri Lanka, Asia's Next Knowledge Hub. And this panel, we've aimed it at being the ultimate work destination. Julian in the morning said that the vision of Work in Sri Lanka is to make Sri Lanka the #1 work destination. So we are aiming right to the top. But we have to be aware that there are many other countries who have similar goals. If you take Singapore, Dubai, they've already started becoming those hubs, and they are ahead of us. So, in this process, Sujiva, if I could ask you, what is the readiness in terms of the middle management, the work ethics in Sri Lanka to translate these policies, these very ambitious goals that we have set for ourselves into action to actually achieve this status of becoming the #1 work destination?
I think it's important to sort of look at it in context. See, when you're coming off a 30-year conflict, it takes time. And if you especially take the private sector, they will always take a kind of a wait and see kind of approach, kind of attitude. I think that's what has happened over the last 3.5 years, and government, to their credit, I think they've been sort of full steam moving forward, irrespective of whether the private sector was putting their hand up or not. But I think starting, we've seen so much enthusiasm towards the middle part of, or the second part of this year, and then I'm sure 2014 and beyond is when you see some of the large projects, some of the initiatives which the private sector has, commencing now and going forward. I think sort of they are ready for it. Is again, government is doing, in my view, a terrific job on some of the fronts, especially the infrastructure front, making sure as much as possible getting the macroeconomic indicators in control. Not easy, but I think they've done a terrific job over the last couple of years. A lot more to be done. And I'm sure the private sector will respond. And I get the feeling is responding now. When you speak to some of the entrepreneurs with some of the plans what they have, is amazing. I mean, what they have, some of the plans for Colombo is I think Defense Secretary showed some of the pictures in the morning. I mean, that's entirely done by the private sector. It's not the government sector driven. So, I mean, short answer to your question is, I think the private sector is ready. Macro fundamental looks good, and I'm sure the next couple of years, I'm generally an optimistic guy. I mean, I want to.
I think most of us.
And I think they will respond, and then there'll be great opportunity. I mean, I'll just to share with you is I think Rohan raised the important point. Is you need to, if you want people to come back to Colombo. I had a colleague who was with PwC, and when I asked him, why don't you come and work with me for 2 years? He said, 2 things, Sujiva, can you look after? He said, salary is low. She told me, I'm earning £200,000 in London. That's my salary. I am willing to take a pay cut. That's absolutely no issue. And I wanted him to come in as a partner to my firm. Second one, he said, I'm married to a British girl. Can you accommodate her? I'll be on the next flight. So I said, don't worry. I said, you come over and we will make sure that she's employed. And we did employ her for 2 years because we thought, I mean, we had enough British clients. So we could actually get her in to handle some of those large accounts. And he stayed here for 2 years as a partner of my firm. I know he took a huge pay cut from his £200,000 is 40 million rupees a year. But he said, Sujiva, what I learned in Colombo is far better, the exposure he got, than the 15 years he's been in London, heart of London, in the London Bridge office. You know, see, they love it, but you need to create that atmosphere. What is it that's holding them back from coming in? In his case was his British wife, just married. And thinking, if I have to leave her at home, and when he has to work, say, 8, 10, 12 hours a day, and she's at home all the time, all alone, it's going to be a problem. Because she'll start grumbling. The point is that, it's very, I'm happy to come over whenever you want me. I'm happy to come over again. That's just to share with you. You need to look at it as a collective decision. I think that's really important.
We are out of time, but we are running short of time. So I will pause this discussion and open the floor for questions. I think we already have hands up. We have mics. Yes. If you could please tell us your name and what you do and which country you're from.
Sure. My name is Kim, and I was invited to come to Sri Lanka about in September. And I was invited by a BOI to come over, and I thought I would test the waters first, and so I just did a 6-month tourism visa. Then when we went specifically to ask for a residency, I guess because the BOI isn't profitable, and it may have to do with Section 16, Section 17, I'm not sure. I was wondering if you could clarify if there's anything that relates to whether the BOI is profitable, so they don't think it's possible for me to get a residency because the BOI is not paying taxes because it's not a profitable situation. Can you clarify that for me?
I think you're asking about the company is profitable, right?
The company is not profitable.
It's a BOI.
It's a BOI.
It's a little too technical.
Yeah, so basically what you're asking is, because it's not profitable, do you not get the residence visa?
Right, I was told that unless I was doing some FDI, foreign direct investment, bringing over $150,000 personally, that I would not be approved for a residence visa.
Yeah, there is an actual legal requirement for 150,000 fixed deposit, right?
No, rupees.
Is it not rupees or dollars?
Do you know the BOI?
No, when someone is coming in as an investor, what is the requirement? They have to have a... No, I mean,
Sorry, visa,
Visa.
BOI company. What she's asking is her company is not profitable, therefore she can't get the residence visa. Is that the situation? Where if the company is not profitable, they won't be given residence visa. You're not sure about that. Unfortunately,
I'll take it offline, I think.
yes. But we will. But why don't you stay in touch with WorkInSriLanka? We'll try to clarify that for you.
And then a quick question for Pradeep, just real quick. On the concept stage of the proposal that we would put in front of your company, how extensive a business plan is necessary for that? And do you give any, I think you do provide some kind of assistance on formulating the presentation?
There is a guideline in the website. If you go, there is a guideline,
Okay.
and there are a few questions that you need to answer, and that becomes your business plan. It's a two-page plan. You just send that to us, and once we go through it, we'll get back to you and ask you to come in and do a pitch.
Very good. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We have a question on the other side.
It's not a question. I can answer all those questions.
Right. There is mic coming.
Thanks. So it's very easy to answer on her question. When it's Section 16, she has to invest $250,000. She has to issue in shares. Then after that, she needs a recommendation of the BOI. She needs a recommendation of the Minister of Defense. And then she has to sit 1 day at immigration to get finally a residential visa for 1 year. You know, this is the procedure. You know, I'm terribly sorry, sir. I'm foreigner. I think you can see. It's, you know, you just give a good news show, but reality is not like this. You know, it's very difficult to get a residential visa. You have to fight, you have to sit at BOI for hours. Then the Director General is not there, it's the only person who can sign, then you have to wait at the Ministry of Defense. It's not the way you offer, it's not the way you present it. Believe me, it's very, very difficult. You know, I did it for myself, now I have for 3 years residential visa. I have it for my other directors, but it's a headache, it's a headache, it's a headache. You know, you see, you're the experts, for sure you should be the expert here, but you can even not give an answer on such a simple question. And this is all the time like this. You know, I'm very happy that that lady of exchange control is over there. She can, the explanation is perfect, but I assure you, you can go here to 95% of lawyers, 95% of accountants, they all give you a different explanation. They all give you a different explanation. I'm not going to give my identity, you know, I want to be incognito. Because
Don't worry, nothing's going to happen to you.
No. I have my residential visa, it's all okay, don't worry. But we were in trouble with exchange control a few years ago. No, it's all settled because we got wrong information of chartered accountants, of lawyers, and this and this and this. You know, fact is, imagine as foreign investor when we arrive, imagine we can just go to exchange control and we can have a talk and they give the explanation. It would be great. But this is not the reality. You know, we arrive here, we need to find a lawyer, we need to find a chartered accountant, and they just talk around and they just tell some stories. And believe me, only in 5% of the cases you get the right explanation. It's the same for that lady now. Maybe she's here from September. She even does not know how to arrange her things. Imagine she goes tomorrow to an accountant or a lawyer, he's going to give some explanation. Next week she goes to someone else, he's going to give another explanation. Believe me, I don't know for Sri Lankans who come back how it is, but for foreigners, yeah, that's the only word I found now, it's hell.
I think Sanjeeva wants to respond to your question. I would also like to add to that.
So I run a company which is under BOI Section 17, and we've hired more than 10 foreigners in the 8 years we've operated, and we've had absolutely no such experience like what you described. Not participate. Hold on, let me finish. Have never had any need to participate in any kind of corruption. We are not a profitable company. We are a venture-funded company. We are growing, and we've hired more than 10 foreigners. And there is a process we have followed to bring a person in, and we follow that process, and we get a residence visa for the person to live and work here.
Yeah.
There's never been any problem at all.
I understand. You know, at this moment we also have 12 foreigners, including me. You know, once you know the system, it's all fine. But it's not easy as a foreigner to find the system.
So
Look over there.
I agree. It is up to
Look
you.
over there.
So-
Look over there. She's there. She's here since September, and she does not know what to do.
So the problem is, I would not expect the foreigner to go find it. I am the one who's running the company. We have an HR department and we have an organization that knows how to run the process. When we hire a person, it is our responsibility, just like when I worked in the US as a Sri Lankan person working in the US, because my employer who got me the visa, I didn't have to go get a lawyer and go figure all this nonsense out. Same here. I do that for the people who work in my company.
Yeah, okay, but once again, when you arrive here as an investor, you know the company is not there yet. So you really have to start from zero, like she wants to do. This is starting, you know, it's very clear she's a foreigner. She has to start from zero. She has to.
There are different scenarios. We're talking about an investor coming in and doing something.
Yeah, I'm the investor.
Employee.
I'm not the employee,
So
I'm
this
the
is work in
investor.
Sri Lanka. Primarily, if it's an employee, it's a whole different scenario.
Yeah, but she will not be, she's not the employee because she goes to BOI. Obviously, she's an investor also.
I think what we're identifying here is that there is an information gap. And this actually the WorkInSriLanka website was started exactly to try and address this. And in our side, we are trying our best to kind of have a one-stop portal where anyone, not only Sri Lankans who know the right lawyer to go to or the right accountant to go to, but you can go to anyone from anywhere in the world before coming to Sri Lanka can go to this site and see if the information that you want is there. If it is not there, we're actually very interactive as Gillian told in the morning. You can email contact@WorkInSriLanka, and if you have a query and if we immediately don't have the answer, we try to contact, in your case it's BOI, because I don't think it's a visa, it's not immigration, because your problem is actually at the BOI level, and unfortunately we don't have anyone from the BOI in this panel. So you could get in touch with WorkInSriLanka. We'll try our best to get in touch with the BOI and try to help you. And we've done this for many queries, and if you have, and this is exactly what WorkInSriLanka is trying to do, because there is this information gap, and you have completely different accounts of the same experience. So we want to try and bridge this gap so that people don't have to say that they don't have the information, and that's why they're stuck making a decision. Yeah. Do we have any more pressing questions? Because we're out of time. Oh, we have one. Can we just, the lady over there? Yeah.
Hello, I'm Zoe. I'm currently the Managing Director of ISECN Sri Lanka. As we've seen, we have an amazing vision for Sri Lanka in 2020, and we're becoming a hub, and we're growing and developing so fast. So what is the value for us in Sri Lanka to get talent, to get people who have a global mindset, who have had that international experience, to come back into Sri Lanka?
Sorry, if you could just tell us what your company does.
Actually, we're a global youth development organisation. So we develop young people who have certain skills, certain competencies and global mindset as well by running an international internship program.
And you're asking how they could find job placements?
No.
If you could just, I missed, would you want to ask?
Yeah. I think you're asking a broader question about how, I think one of the key issues that we have to really internalize, and I think that's something everybody in government and in outside government has to do, is what does a knowledge hub mean? It means knowledge coming in, knowledge workers coming in, knowledge workers going out, returning. That's what a hub means. We really haven't got all the pieces in our heads yet, particularly in government. We don't have the idea that we must encourage people to come in for short and long periods, and then, people should be able to leave. And that whole back and forth is not really internalized yet. So I think that's part of what events like this are doing. At no point did I don't know, I can't speak for anybody else, did I say things were perfect. I said there is opacity, I said there is discretion, I said we have problems, we have mindset problems. What we have to do is to get beyond them. And just whining and moaning doesn't get us beyond that. I think what will get us beyond that is engaging with the issues, discussing our differences, and coming up with solutions and identifying opportunities. So that's something we really have to do. I don't think we are quite there yet, as far as I'm concerned. We've got a long way to go.
And I don't think any of us think we are there yet, because then we would already be the #1 destination. And the reason that we have this, as you rightly said, is to try and identify what these problems are and try to come to a collective position that we need to get over these and try to reach that goal that we need to get to. And it's been very heartening to see the two sides of issues. We've seen the progress that the institutional framework, the private sector mindset has been making, and we also see that there are still issues and mindset blockages as well as information gaps. And these are the things that we need to address as we try to overcome challenges and barriers. And I think the take home is that if you come across any issue, it's not to go around complaining to people who can't solve that issue. It's trying to either make a solution on your own, which is what WorkInSriLanka actually is. It was just a volunteer initiative where we thought there is a problem here and we need to solve this, and we just started it. So likewise, if you see a problem, try to see how you can overcome the problem, and try to share it with everyone else. This is WorkInSriLanka is also an open forum. It's totally made up by volunteers. So if you find an issue, if you can't find the solution, try to get in touch with us. And if you find the solution, get in touch as well and let us know so that we can share it with everyone. And on that note, since we've been running behind schedule, I'll try to reduce the delay. We'll close this session, and I hope that all of you got some amount of good information and also found places that you can find solutions, and seriously use all of this information, this wealth of expertise that we have in Sri Lanka, in this network, to make an informed decision to work in Sri Lanka. Thank you.